Hey, they told me not to scream as loud this time, so. How are you guys doing? How is DML doing? I have this problem, this ear issue. It's wax buildup. It's really gross. I don't want to talk about it, so I just want you to like understand without having to judge me based on stigma of earwax buildup. So when I ask you how you're doing, I really need to hear you. How are you doing? How's DML doing? When I say ig, you say night. Ig! Ig! When I say ig, you say night. Ig! Ig! When I say are you ready, you say we are ready. But you do it like with more enthusiasm than you've ever done anything. Anything. When I say are you ready, you say we are ready. Are you ready?
We are ready!
Are you ready?
We are ready!
You guys are ready! You guys are not! Are you ready?
We are ready!
Thank you. I like you now. Okay, so this is going to be awesome. Last night was incredible. The Ignite Talks were mind-blowing. Tonight they're going to be, you have no idea what's in store. These speakers are so incredible and are at the heart and essence of what makes this community the magical place that it is. In case you didn't see me last night, my name is Andrew Slack. I'm from the Harry Potter Alliance. I'm going to be doing an amazing workshop with some other amazing people tomorrow, DML in action. So check us out, 11 to 1 a.m. And we're going to be looking at the future of DML, so that's going to be awesome. Let's move into this. I'm like really excited about these speakers. These are, after last night and the mind-blowing nature of it, these speakers are going to be speaking with humor, with heart, some with grief, some with vision, actually all with vision, and it's all DML in its truest form. As we move forward with a new future for DML, we're going to get to see those who embody that message together. And I ask that you talk to them later. There won't be drinks afterwards. I apologize for lying to you last night. I didn't know I was lying, by the way. That was like hilarious. I was like, and there's drinks! And everybody went out and there was no drinks. And that was sad. But what's more important is thirst, not for drinks, but knowledge, passion, social change, learning, a fun-volution. Viva la fun-volution. When I say ig, you say night. Oh, wait. Ig.
Night.
Ig.
Night.
When I say, are you ready? Well, I didn't really say it yet, but okay. I'm going to say it in a second. And we're going to really go. When I click this is really crazy. These slides just start and they never stop. It's like the craziest thing. It's like the person has to go, it's like a weird video game where they have to like move really fast and then they have to get off the stage even if they're not done. And if they don't get off the stage, then they just die. It's like really crazy. Just kidding, that wasn't funny, I guess. Okay, you won't die, it's fine. And let's be really generous with all of these people because they have put in 100% to prepare their talks and vision and they are incredible. Like, I guarantee that. And be generous and loving and yeah. So I'm about to hit this. Are you ready?
We are ready!
Take a deep breath. Are you ready?
We are ready!
Let's do this!
Hey, thank you so much. Oh my God, my mother almost died last week. I'm serious, I'm not kidding. She got bitten by a tick. She got anaplasmosis. Her organs shut down. It was not pretty. But the point of the story is that we were on our way home. She got better. We're driving home. Got to get her back. Got to get her lying down. Got to get her all tucked in. And we're driving along the road, and she goes, pull over. I need donuts. I was like, serious, Mom? Okay, I'm going to get her whatever she wants, right? Donuts. So they're special apple cider donuts. So we pull into this farm stand where she's had these apple cider donuts before. So I'm like, okay, Mom, just running in, I'm running out, stay right here. So I run into the place, and there's a young woman in cut-off shorts and a apron, and she has flour on her face, and I just couldn't ask for the donuts. And so I said, my mother almost died. I'm in like Jewish PTSD. And I'm like, all she wants is your donuts. And this woman looked at me like she's never heard a story like this before. And she puts the donuts in a bag and she hands them to me. And she won't take my money. And she just shoves me out the door with the donuts. And it's like she doesn't want to have a transactional relationship because we've already gone deeper. And it's something we'll never forget. And so the title of this talk is Telling and Doing. And the pictures that you're seeing right now are of an incredible project called Map Your World. And it's part of an innovation studio that I run at the National Alliance for Media, Arts, and Culture that really is all about telling and doing. Simpler words for technology and empathy, art practice and civic engagement, personal storytelling and the expression of democracy. We are talking about lessons that go beyond the transaction of knowledge transfer and embody telling and doing as a classroom and community practice that provides for agency, creativity, and memory. With Map Your World is funded by MacArthur Foundation and Gates Foundation and Google Earth, and it brings together students on a platform where they can collect data, tell stories, identify solutions to systemic problems, take pictures and share personal narratives, and connect with their peers around the world. It's incredible. It started with a documentary by two incredible women, Nicole Noonan and Maren Granger Monson. There are activities for teachers where teachers become facilitators of remembered experiences. It's free, it's open at mapyourworld.org. Please try it. It's an incredible platform that will connect your students with the rest of the world. The second project that's part of Telling and Doing is the Oakland Fence Project. This is a project that's funded by Tribeca New Media and the Fledgling Fund, and it really riffs off the trope of large-scale photographs as you see here. But what it also does is brings together community artists with the community themselves. And you come together, the project will launch in Oakland and in Karachi, Pakistan. And we add technology into the mix by first creating a website where all the pictures that are taken by the community are collected on this one large website, creating a collective narrative with a real sense of place. But then we're also creating an augmented reality app. So as you walk in front of these 6-foot photographs, you can hold up your phone, which we know is an extension of your body, and the phone itself reads the pixels, and the photograph starts to move. The subject begins to speak to you, and it's something that you remember forever. And what happens after you hit that place of empathy by hearing the story and seeing the subject speak, you have a choice. You can volunteer with an organization. You can donate your time. You can donate your money. You can buy the photograph. So we're building a creative economy in a place where none exists right then. So the whole idea is that after each story, the social action can actually take place, motivated by the narrative itself. Realistically, if we want our stories to change the world, they have to belong to the world. We are here to raise up a generation of storytellers who actually grok the intrinsic connection between telling and doing, and for whom stories hold that revered place that endows meaning and context in everything we learn. These pictures you're seeing are from the website of the National Alliance for Media, Arts, and Culture, also known as NAMAC. We are here to serve all of you, and we hope that you'll join us.
So yeah, this is happening. I've been freaking out for the last 2 weeks. And Learn, Master, Teach, that's the title of my slide, or of my presentation. I want to share an idea with you all today that I'm very psyched about. It's very close to my heart. And the premise is simple. Learn, master, teach. Repeat this over and over, and we may just change the way we do education in the 21st century. I'm here today because I love digital literacy and everything about it. I mean, it's all I do. It's what I live and breathe. And I want to teach as many people digital literacy as possible in the fastest way possible. And in the 21st century, I argue that digital literacy is just as important as reading and writing. I've always asked myself, why should just teachers be teachers? You know, Aristotle believes that teaching is the highest form of understanding, and if that's the case, we should be teaching our young ones how to teach. I mean, we want our kids to understand the world around them. I mean, that's how I see it as an educator. And have you all seen a teenager text today? It's like 901 words per minute with one thumb, and you ask them to artfully search the internet or write an email, and they look at you like you're growing like a hand out of your forehead or something. And I mean, they say, "What, mister? I don't know what you're talking about." So how do we teach digital literacy to with such limited resources and such limited time? The answer is exponential learning, or expo learning. The concept is simple. One teaches two, those two teach two more, and on and on. Now, we create small learning networks that expand exponentially and that grow over time. How does one apply this? I want to give you some backstory. At my school, the Dream Yard Preparatory School in the Bronx, we've been working on digital learning portfolios, or DLPs. Now, DLPs are interactive, living, breathing digital spaces where students can share their learning across all content areas and with the world. The thing is, DLPs require digital literacy skills that we just didn't really have at our school. Neither our staff nor our students knew how to create content, and that was a problem. So, the high demand in skills required a completely radical and different approach, an aggressive approach for teaching skills, because we had limited resources. So we have an amazing group. This is our Mouse Squad, our young group of techies who identify as techies at heart. And these students have an identity, a sense of passion and pride, the likes of which you've never seen before in our school. And what we were missing was a purpose. Right? So this DLP project gave us just that. It gave us this purpose, this newfound sense of drive, of something to do. So the project gave us an opportunity to actually practice exponential learning because we talked about it, now we wanted to do it. We had to learn and master these skills so that we can teach it to everyone. Meet Chris. He's in our Mouse Squad. He's the man. I mean, look at him. He's like looking at you like I'm boss, right? And I told him that we had a mission and we had to set up computers so that we can bring them out in class and we can start creating stuff. And he looked at me and he said, "Mission?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right," because he loves superheroes and superheroes have missions, right? And so I taught Chris how to enroll a Chromebook into our domain. And after teaching Chris how to do this, he taught two more. Those two taught two more. You guys get the idea. So now we had content, right? Or now we had access. So now what we needed to do was teach content, how to create this. So at our school, that consisted of blogging. It consisted of Google Drive, Docs, and slides. We wanted to start easy. So we had a lot of work ahead of us. So what we did was we empowered our Mouse Squad to learn as much skills as possible when it comes to content creation. And by creating, they were learning. It was blowing my mind. They were becoming a hub for skills that were desperately needed in our school and in our community. And by creating, they learned, and by learning these skills and doing it, they started mastering. And we transferred these skills into classrooms by taking small teams into these classrooms to support teachers. The mastery allowed students to start doing sub-skills and start finding things that we just didn't even anticipate. And their discoveries just made them naturally be curious about it. The way it worked was that teachers gave an assignment, a regular assignment, and we sent out a small Mouse Squad Expo Learning team to kind of support the digital piece side of it. And so 3 kids, each support 2, each teach 2, you get the idea. In one lesson period, or in one period, we had taught digital skills, a full history lesson, we created blogs, and on top of that, we created these small little mini learning networks that still exist today. Now, Expo Learning is meant to enhance formal instruction, folks, not meant to replace it. So next year, what we'll be doing is we'll be exploring Expo teaching, right? So we're going to have our kids teach our teachers how to use digital literacy skills so that they can in turn teach them how to teach and how to master or how to assess mastery. Parent engagement. Oh, we all know parents need digital literacy skills. So we want to have our kids teach the kids, and it looks like I'm running out of time because my friend Emily's helping me out here. The idea is teach parents digital skills with our students, and finally, it creates exponential equity. Let's get out there and let's teach these skills because honestly, digital literacy is an equalizer. And finally, there's no right or wrong way to do exponential learning, and Emily and I would love if 4 people, we want to grow our network by 4. We want to do exponential learning with everyone so that next year we can have a DML Expo team. It starts with just 4 people. I'll take 2, Emily takes 2. Find us, please. Thank you.
I want to tell you a story about something I love, something that's changed my life. I want to tell you a story about what you call wireless. I call radio. It begins with a very sharp-dressed Italian man, Guglielmo Marconi, who, with his arcs, with his sparks, made contact with folks on the Titanic who wouldn't have survived otherwise, made contact with Teddy Roosevelt across the Atlantic. A much less well-dressed man followed from the United States, Lee DeForest, who tinkered, who committed patent fraud, or accused people of patent fraud. At any rate, he invented a thing called the tube, the valve, the audion, the detector. And what Lee DeForest did with the detector was, of course, advertise it and sell it. It was America. It was the most sensitive. It was the most reliable. It was the detector. Your air is full of meaning. You must detect the meaning. That was Lee DeForest's mission. As this meaning-filled air expanded, we got networks. We got the National Broadcast Company. We got the Columbia Broadcasting System. As the networks grew, inevitably, here comes Orson Welles, The War of the Worlds, 1938, the first big hoax, the first big parody, the first big thrill, the first big horror story on the radio. But it was prophetic as well. Shortly thereafter, we're looking at radio during World War II, bringing a nation together, giving us something besides fear. What do we need to hang on? We need Reveille with Beverly. That's what we had. 6 pianos, many violins, and the voice, the chairman of the board, Mr. Frank Sinatra, who persisted into the 1950s. Lucky strike, it's toasted. What does that mean? Do you smoke toasted cigarettes? I don't know, but you can hear it on the radio. Frank Sinatra, Light Up Time, the chairman of the board. And in the 1950s, it changes again. It's Judy Phillips, WHBQ, in Memphis, playing a little song by a guy named Elvis Presley. That's all right, Mama. The phones light up. The airwaves explode. People get nervous. More networks start to appear. Regional networks of astounding regional music. Philadelphia, it's soul, it's 45 RPM, you can dance to it. It's an extraordinary explosion of regional musical invention. And it continues into the 1970s. AM radio is king. WROV 1240 AM in Roanoke, Virginia. Oh Lordy, 1240. Bart Prater, the king of the local AM radio DJs, who taught me never puke when you announce, and things move forward in time. Thank you, Bart. I took this with me to WFDD FM in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. National Public Radio, NPR, 88.5 on your radio dial. Playing progressive music for the Triad. Playing Big Star for Winston-Salem. And then, automation. Then corporate takeovers, not learning management systems, network management systems, radio management systems, walled gardens, automation, content, delivery, commodities, and then the revolution. It's iPods. Yes, the return of radio, Radio Redux, podcasts, DIY, carry it in your pocket. Put it on your arm, run with it. You can now be a radio station. You can have a radio station. You can have a podcatcher. That's your tuner, that's your detector, that's your audion patent fraud. Brilliance. It is a podcatcher. It looks like Windows 3.1, but don't look at that. Soon, we bring this into education. Yes, some nutcase publishes this and puts all these little secret things in there from the world of rock and roll. I urge you not to look this up. But if it's great, we can do it in education. Radio will transform education. We will make it. It's Clear Channel again. Apple, are they the Clear Channel of the 21st century? I ask you, I don't know. What happened to RSS? Where did our lovely RSS podcatchers go? They are now on the iTunes store. But wait. DS106 Radio. Yes! You've heard of Radio Caroline. You've heard of Radio London. This is pirate radio for the 21st century. Make radio. Make pirate radio. Tune in right now. Well, no, not right now, but soon. And when you're looking at your handheld device, look what you got. You got Radio Lab. You got With Good Reason. You got the Tobolowsky Files. You got What the Fuck with Mark Maron. You have got all the radio you can possibly consume right there on your mobile device, including the mother of all podcasts, Melvin Bragg, public intellectual, BBC. He interviewed Pete Townsend in the 70s, and now look at him. Dark Matter, Beowulf, The Eunuch, The Wealth of Nations, and it's all right there on your podcatcher, in your pocket. The spirit of radio will not die. You call it wireless, I call it radio. It is a worldwide mind. Thank you.
going to talk about my two favorite things, the internet and learning, and how to bring them together to create online learning environment that is genuinely on fleek, or for those of you who are not big fans of the internet, on point. So I work for an organization called the Story of Stuff Project.
Woo!
Thank you. We make short format online movies about where your stuff crumbs, your water bottle, your cell phone, your t-shirt, and all of the terrible, terrible, horrible, no good, very bad things it is doing to people and the planet. These stories have galvanized a network of people all over the globe who are telling us, I understand that there's a problem, I want to do something about it, but I have no flippin' clue where to start. And so my work there has been to launch headlong into developing online training to think about how do you get people to flex their citizen muscles to create the kinds of changes that we need so desperately in our community. So I've been looking at the universe of online training, and I have to tell you, it is terribly bleak. And we have made a lot of these mistakes ourselves. We are not immune, but there are a lot of PDFs, a lot of multiple choice quizzes, and a lot of fill in the blank. So essentially, we are in the 21st century at the peak of technology, and we are approaching in a way that is not much more advanced than Gutenberg. So I would like to suggest that we use this opportunity to think more creatively about how we might approach this field. And so here are two numbers. This is 2%. This is the average number of people who make it through a massive open online course. There is some debate about that. Some people say it's 2%. Some people say it's as high as 7%. Some people say it's as high as 10%. The next number I want to share with you is 1.43 billion. That is the amount of money that was invested in the landscape of online education in 2014. And I'm bringing this up not to throw the field under the bus, but to suggest that there's an incredible resourced opportunity here. And so I want to look at what's working in the field of the internet. And we're in a moment where we are more connected than ever before. And whether we are talking about a Black Lives Matter hashtag that is connecting disparate moments of protest, or a person online who's coming out as trans and creating community online in a way that isn't possible in their lived community, there is an incredible depth of connection that is happening online. When you talk about what's working, I like to say that what is happening is that we are conspiring together. And I'm talking about that word specifically because, call me a nerd, the Latin root means to breathe together. And so what we are doing is we are taking advantage of that which makes us more human to do something with technology. And so another example of what's working is Tinder. This is my new boyfriend. I met him on the internet that lives in my phone. So if I can do something as improbable as fall in love using my phone, I think there are incredible opportunities here. Woo! And so here we live in a world that is ablaze with technology. There is literally so much power in your back pocket, and it's not being used properly, or to the extent that it could be. And so imagine that you put on a set of headphones, you take to the streets of Oakland, and you were able to access a geographically based tour of the genesis of the Black Panther Party in your neighborhoods. So now I want to offer I've thrown online learning under the bus, but now I want to kind of provide 3 different opportunities for us to think about it differently based on what we've learned and what I've seen in the field. And so the first thing that I want to say is take it to the streets. You have a phone that is more powerful than the computer that put a man on the moon. There are incredible things that allow you to get out of the computer lab. Go, be among the people. 2, apply magic. When I look at what the release of the Beyonce album, digital album, did for creating an imperfect but amazing education on feminism for American culture, it's deeply powerful. The third thing I will say is make it a conversation. Look at what's happening with Minecraft. You have people creating, collaborating, developing whole worlds and servers and connecting in a way that is deeply powerful. So let us think about how we want to take it to the streets, how we can apply magic, how we can create conversation to do things that are incredibly important, like figure out how to create more justice, more equity, and goddamn it, more joy.
Okay. Okay. Am I working? Hi, guys. I'm Lennon. I'm here with an organization called the Dinner Party. We have dinner parties. This is a tofurkey. It is a turkey made of tofu. It is also the last thing that I remember before my life went down a very different path. It was Thanksgiving 2002, and my mom, my brother, my stepdad, and I had gone over to my best friend Emily's house. Emily and I were seniors in high school and had just learned about factory farming, hence the tofurkey. I very distinctly remember my mom telling Emily's parents that she'd just been diagnosed with pneumonia. 2 weeks later, her doctors would realize that the persistent cough that they had taken to be pneumonia was in fact stage 4 lung cancer. 2 weeks after that, she would have half of her left lung removed. My mom died my senior year of college. In the course of those 4 years, I did what most kids do. I stayed really busy and got exceptionally good at avoiding cancer and cancer talk and death and dying. Years later, I met Carla. We had both moved to LA for our musician boyfriends and started working at the same company within the same week. We were walking back from coffee one day when Carla mentioned that her dad had died 6 months before. Until that moment, loss had only ever been a subject to be avoided. That afternoon, it became something very different, a conversation starter rather than a conversation killer. She invited a group of women who'd all lost parents over for dinner one night, and we talked until 2 a.m. and kept doing it. Friends heard about it, and more friends heard about it, and slowly 1 table became 2 tables and 5 tables. Today, there are more than 70 tables in 27 cities. What was once a source of profound isolation has become a source of profound connectivity. We've had people start tables around pregnancy loss and caregiving and mental illness. And this is that moment where I forget what I'm gonna say. We've teamed up with a group of 16 to 24-year-olds, I love this, who've started dinner parties via Google Hangout because that to them felt more natural than sit-down tables. For most young adults, loss is a source of taboo. We see the deer in headlights looks on the faces of those who've never been there and quickly change the subject. We learn to hold back and to hold in what for many of us has been the most significant event in our lives to date. In short, we learn to hide. We now know that isolation and loneliness can lead to increases in stress levels and everything from depression to sleeplessness to heart disease and a loss in focus and agency. We lose the ability to develop new relationships, which means that isolation often only compounds over time. So take a moment and consider what that means in the context of an education system that is built on labels. Rarely do we even know the first names of our teachers, let alone the stories that brought them to the schoolhouse door. We know students by the statistics that they represent, the product of a zip code or a 3rd grade reading score. What if, instead of directing our attention outward, we were to direct it inward, to learn about the stories beneath the stereotypes and our own roads traveled, about the fears and challenges that have made us who we are? What would that change? Sarah and Daryl are part of a quiet movement begun in Baltimore in 2004 to fundamentally reinvent the word family. Students joined the program after their 9th grade year with an average GPA of 0.8. They are surrounded by a group of volunteers, mostly grad students and undergrads from nearby Johns Hopkins. They pack lunches, they give rides to school, they babysit younger siblings so that their students can study for tests in peace. They do, in short, for their kids what families do for theirs. Why does it work? Because they found a way to shift the relationship between volunteers and students from one born of sympathy to one born of empathy. They intentionally define poverty not in terms of economics, but in terms of loneliness. By that definition, all of us know what it is to be poor, just as all of us crave what it is to be rich. Students and volunteers alike are encouraged to share their vulnerabilities and their failures and their sources of loss and isolation. And slowly over time, students whose armor is really strong begins to wear down. They begin to reframe their expectations of those who profess to care and accordingly of themselves. So here's the thing about divided lives. We now know that the more that we try to bury something or shove it under a rug or move on, the more space it actually takes up in our lives. By learning to talk about the things that we scrupulously avoid, the things that bind us together, we can actually learn to live better. So if we're to cultivate the next generation of empathic changemakers, we have to start by turning schools into centers of authentic community, inviting everyone and everywhere to talk about the things that we always hide. Thank you.
So I'm a psychologist. And that means I'm a little long on the L, I study learning. I'm a little short on the D and really short on the M. So I apologize in advance for what I'm about to do, which is really deliver a scientific paper, an Ignite Talk, rejected DML proposal. Let's talk about the promise of digital badges. You all know what badges are. They were going to transform the world, right? About a few years ago, they were going to create new ways to recognize learning. They were going to unlock opportunities for learning. We had the Arnie Duncan kickoff in 2011, the Digital Media Learning Competition, an amazing event in 2013. We've got Connie and Mark and David on stage with Bill Clinton promising 2 million badges, Badge Alliance. Where are we now? Well, we're not quite there yet. What's the problem with digital badges? Everybody pretty much agrees they're not really yet widely valued by employers, admissions officials, and therefore not by many learners. We're not quite there yet. We've got some work to do. I want to talk about a study that I did that I think will shed some light on the challenges we face. The Digital Media, the Design Principles Documentation Project, we studied the 29 projects that were funded to develop digital badges in the 2012 competition. I was blessed with an amazing group of collaborators. We spent 2 years doing a very complicated sort of design study of the sorts of which I don't know anybody ever did before. It was a little complicated. Part of it was that they funded 29 very, very different projects to do something that had never really been done before, which was build a badge system and a broader learning ecosystem around digital badges. So the question is what happened? Well, what did we do in the first place? We tried to capture the practical wisdom. What's the sort of contextualized, nuanced knowledge that emerged across these 29 projects? Because we felt that that knowledge might travel with this in ways that other people could use. So we decided, let's organize this a little bit. We looked at four different functions of badges: recognizing learning, assessing learning. If you're going to recognize and assess learning, you're going to impact motivation. And then we thought about using the evidence to study learning. We tracked the evolution of badge design practices. We looked at their intended practices and their original proposals. Then we interviewed projects to see how were those intentions enacted? Did it work? Didn't it work? And then we looked at the formal practices after funding was ended. This allowed us to identify more general design principles across these projects. Once we formalized those principles, we could study them across the projects and bookmark them to the broader academic literature. How'd it go? Here's what we found. Badges work better in some places than others. You see on the left that only five of these projects never even built a badge system. You can see on the right that only 11 of these projects ended up creating what resembled the ecosystem they proposed. We also found that badges work better. Data in an Ignite Talk. Take a look. On the left, you can see in green, the projects that layered badges into existing systems were much more successful than the projects on the right that tried to build everything. We also found that badges work better in informal places. 5 of these projects tried to award badges for formal academic credit. 1 of them succeeded, PASA. They paused it after 1 year. Badges also work better when internally valued. Another obvious practice for adding value to badges is to gain external endorsement. 10 projects tried, only 4 succeeded. 8 tried to secure external value, only 2 succeeded. Badges work better when they offer unique information. 4-H built a badge system that was essentially redundant, where their existing credentialing system of trophies and ribbons and their existing social networks, they ran into technology problems, bam, it was paused. Don't do it. The most robust systems we found, we heard earlier today about the Mouse system, the Mouse Wins program, but also S2R medals. Both of these projects awarded badges for learning that was really social and networked. Badges lent themselves very well. What do we conclude? I believe we need to really redouble our efforts to award formal credit. The existing credentialing system evolved over a century. There's tacit networks. There's a lot of stuff that has to be changed. We just have to keep working at it. The second thing I think we need to do is to redouble our efforts to exploit the unique features. Let's get the evidence in the badges that adds value above and beyond the formal credential. Let viewers drill down into badges, have lots of transparent evidence. And then finally, the most important thing I think of all, this is a little controversial, we need to align with these other relevant developments and trends. We've been a little resistant with competency-based education. I've concluded we have to give in. We have to work with them. Stackable credentials, credit for prior learning. If you're doing this work in the higher education space, I'll have a project I can help you. Thank you very much.
Hi there, I'm Renee Hobbs. I'm going to talk to you about how teacher motivations shape digital learning. What I'm really interested in about is the art of creating a media literacy learning environment. And that's partly why being here at DML has been so exciting, because all of you are creating these learning environments where you're exploring and expanding the concept of literacy, looking at multitasking and transmediation, but also looking at issues of representation, of surveillance, of propaganda, and really thinking about the dynamics, about the opportunities and the risks. I want to introduce you to my daughter. Can you see the family resemblance? Are there any parents in the audience? Raise your hand. Oh, proud parent moment. My daughter Rachel, she's an activist. She worked at the Powerful Voices for Kids project, and she taught third graders in a really dynamic experience, kind of accidentally introducing them to study something third graders don't normally study, the issue of homelessness. When they had an accidental encounter with homeless people, she spent 10 days of her learning experience teaching kids about homelessness. They ultimately made a 14-page comic where they integrated their learning from interviewing homeless advocates, and it was thrilling. So now I'm involved in a big project teaching other kinds of teachers besides my own daughter, and I've discovered that teachers have different motivations for digital learning. Here are some of the 120 people who attended the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy, like, for instance, Teacher 2.0. She's really interested in using the power of connected learning to connect her middle school students in Massachusetts to middle school kids in Turkey, as kids experience the power of learning about culture, people who are culturally different. Here's the Spirit Guide. She uses poetry and film to teach about different representations of kindness as her way of illustrating how people use art to represent our ideals. That's why I'm really interested in exploring educator motivations for digital learning, and I created a digital learning horoscope because I love horoscopes. Are there any horoscope lovers in the room? Yes! And how about people who like to take quizzes? Anybody like to take quizzes? Yes! So take the quiz and find out what's your motivation for digital learning. Are you a trendsetter by connecting to popular culture? Are you a motivator trying to engage learners? Are you a professor who wants your students to gain content knowledge? Perhaps, I bet you are, Teacher 2.0, helping use technology to connect with and learn from others. Well, here's my profile. When I took the test, which is available at powerfulvoicesforkids.com, I found out I'm a demystifier. That's no surprise. I like to ask how and why questions, pulling back the curtain on how media are constructed. But I'm also a tastemaker, and I am a watchdog. That's why I created Mind Over Media, Analyzing Contemporary Propaganda. It's a user-generated content website where you can upload examples of contemporary propaganda and you can rate them on the scale from beneficial to harmful. That's because I'm really interested in the dialectic between empowerment and protection. I really am aware that part of what I'm dealing with as a media participant, consumer, and creator is this love-hate relationship. And I think it's really important for all of us as educators to reflect on our own values and motivations for why we do this work. That's why I created the quiz, because I wanted the quiz to be a tool to promote reflection among educators as they thought about why they were doing their work. But I realized in creating the quiz that reflection is a social practice, that it isn't something where you go off in a room by yourself and think about your motivations. You actually engage in a dialogue with others. That's how you discover what matters most to you. So when I encountered this crazy techie, Kristen, right? And she really loves these new tools and technologies, and I am definitely not a techie. My techie score is very low on the quiz. But she showed me how to use a powerful tool like Flipgrid to support online learning. And that's why now I'm teaching graduate school fully online, because I discovered there are tools that reflect my values as a person who's interested in creating a dialogic space for learning to happen. So the reason why digital learning forces us to reflect on our motivations is because we may be able, as we reflect on our motivations, to deepen our respect and trust, our appreciation of diversity in all its many forms. Thanks very much.
Oh, guys. How many people knew exactly what they wanted to do with their life when they were in college? And they followed the perfect, okay, there you go, 1 out of 300. So we were definitely not those people. We were in school and faced that typical moment that most people do where you get to the end of college and you realize you've sunk a lot of debt and you think, holy shit, what do I do now? And when we talked to our high school, our teachers, they said, go to the Career Center, they'll help you figure it out. So I said, great, okay, good. So we go to the Career Center, and then very soon it was a big, oh, this is not good. We took the Myers-Briggs test. We explored the Department of Labor's inspiring ONET database, and realized that what we really needed was something completely different. We didn't think that finding your path in life should feel like going to the dentist. And so we thought, what if we, got in an old beat-up green RV, and my buddy Brian, his grandparents had this old RV that didn't work anymore. We painted it green because the green paint was on sale at Home Depot, and we spent 6 months building our own project. We cold called people all across America who were doing interesting different things with their lives and asked them, could we sit down and talk to you and learn how you got to where you are today? And whether it was a lobsterman on the coast of Maine, small bookstore owners, the graphic designer for Burton Snowboards, the beer brewer in Seattle for Red Hook Ale. We just basically sat down and learned how they found their roads in life, and learned that actually most people had no clue what they wanted to do, and that's okay, and that life is about kind of navigating and adapting, and it doesn't have to be a linear perfect thing. And so we got a little bit lucky. A big national magazine did an article on our road trip, which got the attention of a big book publisher, Random House. We did a book about our road trip project 12 years ago. We always say that we're recent college grads, but our team is like, you're not recent college grads anymore. So this is a long time ago. So we ended up writing this book. It got a bunch of publicity, and we were on the Today Show. It became the 15th best-selling book in America on Amazon. And around that time, there was all this kind of packaging of Road Trip Nation. We had a fancy William Morris agent down the street, and MTV wanted to do a reality show out of it, and we were like 22, so we were like, awesome, whatever. But then pretty soon they wanted to vote people off the motorhome, and they wanted the RV to explode at the end of the season, and that's when we said, you know what, this is just not what we want Road Trip Nation to be. So we ended up leaving and building Road Trip Nation independently for the last 12 years as a movement that has put over 140,000 students on road trips in the last 12 years. Both on national road trips in our fleet of green RVs and on a local level through our curriculum in schools where mostly high-risk first-generation college-going kids who've had low to no visibility of different things they can do with their lives actually get the chance to build road trips in their own communities. And the outcome of this has been this massive content archive, because not only have we mobilized these road trips, but we've been intentional with the content development. So Road Trip Nation has now amassed the world's largest media database of people's stories, talking about the roads they've taken, how they've gotten to where they are today, whether it's a food scientist who does the Jelly Belly candy things, or we know that not every kid in the world is going to be able to take a road trip in a huge green motorhome. But can there be a place where people go to explore and get visibility and build confidence and efficacy about what's possible for their future, regardless of what zip code you're in or what types of role models you have surrounding you by the nature of how you grew up? And so Road Trip Nation today is really kind of on this mission to build this place, build this movement where people can go to find their roads. And the thing that we'd like to end on is that every person's story has power, and that everyone's road in life has incredible insights that they can share. And so this platform we've developed at shareyourroad.com, we would be honored for all of you to share your roads and share your stories of how you found your road in life. And I thought that was the last slide, but there's another slide. So the neat thing is that all of the kind of stories in this database we're building can be really granular. People can share, were they the first family to go to college? Did they have a learning disability? Did they grow up on a military base? And so by building this kind of rich, really granular experience, students can see reflections of exactly what they're interested in. So that in the future, when my daughter grows up and the next generation comes up and they go try to figure out what do they want to do with their lives, they don't have to search the internet database. They don't have to go through the Myers-Briggs test can be a good tool. I always get knocked for knocking on it. But for a kid who's 18 and has all the aspiration in the world, we're trying to create a new approach, a new aesthetic, something that's more than just a career exploration widget. Something that is an experience and aspirational and helps people to really find their roads in life. So this is our new book. Wow, I really thought that was going to end. This is our new book, The Roadmap, which is a composition of 14 years of these insights from the road, and it was just released last month by Chronicle Books. So thank you very much.
Hi. All right, so I used to work for a nonprofit that wanted me to engage youth in a community-based city planning process. Now, city planning is kind of a hard sell for 14-year-olds, so I thought, okay, how can I possibly make this more engaging and interesting for them? And I thought, zombies. Teens love zombies, right? It's a no-brainer. So I only had a couple weeks, and I wanted to do this scenario where there was a zombie apocalypse, and we needed to make our city the best it could possibly be to up our chances of survival. And the organization I was working with said, absolutely not. Looking back on it now, it wasn't the best idea I've ever had, but they didn't say no because it wasn't a very good idea. They said no, and they told me this because it wasn't serious enough. The reality was that they didn't want to just engage youth, they wanted to engage youth on their terms. They wanted youth to think about city planning as they thought about it. And they worried about what our investors would say about zombies in the middle of our city planning, but that is beside the point. So I was really frustrated by this. I was involved in a lot of leadership programs in college. I was that kid. And they all seemed to kind of share this idea of this very, very serious leadership. And this seemed super counterintuitive to me because we were designing programs for the kids like me, the ones who were going to get involved no matter what happened, no matter how boring this program was. I was going to suffer through it because it was going on my resume, damn it, and I didn't care what I had to do to get to that point. But if we were really living the values of these programs that we're in, shouldn't we be designing them so that they're engaging as many youth as possible? Shouldn't we make them so that the people who maybe aren't as likely to get involved right away on their own are more likely to, because they probably need the skills more than anybody else? So I'm lucky to work now for the Harry Potter Alliance, which doesn't shy away from unusual methodology, and I was looking at the hero's journey in preparation for one of our programs, and I noticed it looked a lot more familiar to me this time around. And I finally realized it reminded me of the social change model of leadership development, something that had been etched into my brain in the 300 leadership programs I was in. So when you take the hero's journey and the social change model and you kind of overlay them, something interesting happens. They match up a lot better than you would expect a literary model and a social change model would. There were a couple people around to kind of witness my mental breakdown as I was like opening up Photoshop and overlaying things and rotating and holy crap, what's happening? What is this? And that's a good representation of my face. But the more you think about it, the more it actually makes sense, right? Maybe we see this particular process repeated so often because it's a reliable creator of leaders. We see it in Harry Potter and in the Hunger Games, where characters like Harry and Katniss are asked to consider their values, to make a commitment to those values, to find a group and a team to work with and work effectively with them, and ultimately to become better citizens of their world. And I see it every day in the youth that I work with in the HPA as they experience their own calls to adventure. They are kind of taken out of the world they know and into a new world of activism where they have to think differently. They find a team to go on this journey with them and ultimately bring everything they've learned back to their communities. 60% of the youth involved in our program say that they're first-time leaders and activists. And they often say that the connections to Harry Potter and to stories is the thing that finally got them to get engaged. That should not be very surprising to the people in this room, because so many of the hot topic education issues we're talking about, game-based learning, digital storytelling, they all have narrative in common. Narrative is the thing that we use to engage learners in the classroom. So why aren't we doing this more in leadership education? I propose a new model of leadership development, one that brings together the hero's journey and the social change model to make explicit the idea that characters like Katniss are developing leaders themselves. One that asks young leaders to think about their calls to adventure, their Hagrids knocking down their door, to consider what kind of hero identity they would want to develop for themselves. Would they want to be a Mockingjay or a Batman or a Captain America or Agent Carter? And to make a conscious commitment to becoming more like that hero. One that emphasizes the importance of mentors like Dumbledore and Gandalf, but also the importance of peer mentors like Harry and Hermione and what they do in Dumbledore's army. And makes clear that the diversity of skills and backgrounds in teams like the Avengers and the Fellowship made those teams stronger, not weaker. And ultimately one that gives permission to youth for them to put their acts of service and leadership on a scale of epic love that's comparable to the characters that they know and look up to. We need to stop being so afraid of protecting this mythical sanctity of serious activism that we fail to engage the youth who need it most. They're not taking these issues seriously, they're just learning how to be heroes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anna. This is Antero.
Hey!
We're going to tag team this one. And we'd like to see how many examples we can give you in our short 5 minutes of people who we're learning from about how to make connected learning work where you are, with the tools you have, the constraints you have, and the institutions that you have, and to make those constraints generative. So these are people like Jose Rodriguez, who is always succeeding at finding ways to connect and engage with his students in conversations that are happening beyond classroom walls. One simple way he does this is with a Twitter handle, and he always uses hashtags that are happening, trending around the world. And then there's Aaron Klein, who uses augmented reality practices to build and construct different positions with which the students then enter text that they're reading in their classroom.
So can I just say that right as we're running up here, as Janae was finishing, and it's like, we're next, what are we going to say? Which I think is the best way for us to think about trying to compose and ignite as we're composing it, as we're performing it. So I want to talk about composing and interpreting. So I have one quote that I'm going to read here from a painter named Robert Irwin. And he says, shapes on a painting are just shapes on a canvas unless they start acting on each other and in a sense multiplying. A good painting has a gathering, interactive buildup. When they've got it, they just jump off the goddamn wall at you, right? And I want us to think about what is the interactive buildup in people like Stephanie Westpuckett and Kevin Hodgson and the ways they're using multimedia text and networking with each other and thinking about the types of work that young people can be producing in their classrooms.
I can't believe you made that.
Yeah.
You were so off
had
in
a
your
tangent.
slides. Okay, so anyway, we're really fascinated about how these media can then spin and weave with the way that we work them. So we've been using wall art that's happening in our communities that we've then mediated in some way, and since we've done that, you're able to share it now, and it's able to send on further than this. So there are so many people using that sort of capacity in their places. So Jamila Liscott is an example of that. She's researching with youth, their communities, and their world, and then with the findings that they're coming from their research, they're creating multimedia and embodied performances. And then they're sharing those with audiences in varied ways. Very powerful. There's also the CL MOOC that's happening starting like next week, shout out. And these are ways that educators can get together through the summer and experience for themselves connected learning, to watch their messages and their artifacts meet others and see what it means to be connected.
My greatest pain in life is that I will never be able to see myself perform. Does anybody in 20 seconds, 2 seconds know who said that? Kanye West. So I do want to point out that in a space where we talk about designing equity, Kanye West is the most important person for us to be thinking about in terms of who are role models that own the digital swagger that we need young people to see. My pre-service teacher, Maria Rodriguez, is speaking to other pre-service teachers through her blog and thinking about what is the positionality of young teachers of color owning their classroom spaces. Likewise, Janelle Bentz is thinking about the role of inquiry and being in conversation with other people at places like the National Writing Project, and how are they owning these positions as women, as teachers of color who are speaking out as role models, right? So what is that space of the digital swagger in 2015?
And all of these teachers not only see past the four walls in their classrooms, they see their four walls as part of this larger ecology of learning that the youth are connected with, and that youth are driving their learning pathways through those spaces. And it's a very humanizing experience in their places. So like Dawn Reed, who with her students invites them to examine their own cultures, so to use their devices to start to make the familiar strange and the strange familiar, to really understand who am I in this world and what am I not seeing, what's invisible around me. And Aram Kabodian, who was inspired by Humans of New York, if you've seen that, his students go out and photograph and do portraits and interviews with people in East Lansing to then humanize this space they have together.
So building from this, we want to think about what is the wishing wall of the digital age, right? What are the ways that we are wishing and constructing together to dismantle the digital and hegemonic challenges in classrooms and spaces today? Right? So thinking about that, what are the challenges for young people, such as the Uni Project?
So the Uni Project is an awesome project that is a mobile library where they partner with communities and local neighborhoods to bring a library and drawing spaces into the streets where youth are and their adults.
Likewise, at the Schools for Community Action, a couple miles away in South Central Los Angeles, educators like Mark Gomez and teachers and students and parents are working together to create the Schools for Community Action, a partner-wide community space with South Central Los Angeles, right, to rehumanize that space. Going too fast.
Yeah. These are some of the many examples that we could have done if we could speak faster. So what we'd like to do actually is invite you right now to pick up a device and share out someone who you're learning from about how to make connected learning work where you are with what you have. And our last example then is Troy Hicks, from whom we remixed his presentation that he had done, and we added some of our own teachers to that mix, and we invite you to right now, I'm serious, pick him up. I don't see you doing it. All right, thanks.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan Worth, and my name is Jonathan Worth, and I'm a photographer. This is, I wonder if you could bear with me, this is part pitch, part Ignite talk, and part question about whether I can do this with an open class. Can I ask you if you're over the age of 12 to put your hands in the air now, or just one, your non-tweeting hand, and can I ask you to keep it there? Oh. Thank you. So I'm a photographer, and I try to be what Fred Richin describes as a useful photographer. And for me, that means not making any more pictures. It means, in fact, there's plenty out there. In fact, it means enabling other people to speak clearly with the images and enabling them to be heard. And since 2009, I've been trying to do this, but through my undergraduate class, which we opened out in 2009. And within 30 weeks, we had about over 35,000 people who'd come. Last year, with the help of the DML team, we unhitched that class from the university, and we took it out, and we deployed it in libraries and community centres, and it was delivered by librarians and community leaders. Keep one hand in the air, same one, Alan. And so, so this time last year as well, I showed this picture, and it was a very frustrating picture because it shows immigrants on a beach. They've got their phones in the air. They're trying to pick up a free phone signal, so they can tell their friends and relatives where they are. They're about to jump in a boat. And we worked with the World Press Photography Award, that's like the Pulitzer Prize for photography, to turn their Academy of 8 a year into a learning network of 11 million. It took a photographer from New York to go to that beach to make that photograph. It should have been them making the image, participating in their own representation. The problem persists. Naively, it's a year later, and since I showed you that picture, 6,000 people didn't make it out of the water when they got into it from that beach. Keep your hands in the air if you possibly can. So my job as a photographer is to help people to not look at the numbers and instead see names. It's to empathize with the people that are behind these stories so that they can feel better about moving to action to increase their sort of civic engagement. So this is the picture for this year. This was made on Tuesday this week. This is Eli and Lauren. Eli has Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and his mum, Duchenne muscular dystrophy is an incurable disease. It's 100% fatal. His mum, Emily, reached out to me as Phone Our Nation and asked me if I could get photographers to tell the story of these young boys. It's the biggest genetic killer of children in the world. It's predominantly young boys. 350,000 families currently are suffering with it. So I said, well, photographers aren't necessarily the best people to tell stories, right? And if you think about it, maybe everyone's a photographer. And what happens if we think about that? What about if we take, a socially inclusive photographic moment and point out how it's socially exclusive for our people, like the selfie? And she says, Jonathan, they can't do selfies. They can't lift a toothbrush, most of them, let alone a camera. And so I said, well, that's the point. They're going to get their carer to make the picture. They're going to participate actively in their own representation, though, because they're going to say, well, if you hold the camera up there, I'm going to look weaker than if you hold it here. And if you have the light there, I'm going to look scary. But if you have the light there, then I'm going to look like a rock star. And what's this context that's behind me? What's that saying about me? Essentially, what we're talking about is taking a class out of the course that we took out of the university and deploying it in this pre-existing network so that it goes straight to the people who most need that information so they can actually act on it. Now, you may want to show your solidarity for these young people, and you may want to make this link for Duchenne symbol when you make a selfless, which is what we're going to call it, a selfless, not a selfie. And there is a company out there, we're sure, or a consortium of companies that will donate £1, $1, €1, or a penny for every selfless that's made. Now, these young boys, they predominantly are boys, as I say, are going to annotate their photographs with a wish that they'd like. I wish I could put my hand up when the teacher asks a question. Or I wish I could take my dog for a walk. So you may want to go a step further and you may want to make a selfless pledge, whereby you say, you know what, I'm going to do a sponsored hand raising. Or I'm going to go to the local pound, I'm going to take a dog out and walk this dog for William or for Ben. I've lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that? Okay. So I'm sure, what's the next picture? Keep your hands up, please. So, you know, if you're anything like me, the reason I was sort of losing that is because my hand's getting very tired. And if you're managing to keep your hand up in the air right now, it's probably going numb, it's going to start shaking. You're going to reach the point pretty quick where no matter what you do, you can't keep your hand in the air. Apparently that's what it's like for a 12-year-old with Duchenne's. By 15, most are paralyzed and in wheelchairs. By 21, most are on a ventilator, and most won't reach 25. But if you're a teacher and you have a class and you'd like to help me to tell their stories, then please reach out to me after this talk.
Hello, everyone. My name is Autumn Williams, and I am from Ashoka. So I want you to raise your hand if you've ever heard of Ashoka and don't think that it's an Indian restaurant. Fantastic. Fantastic. So we are the largest network of social entrepreneurs around the world with over 3,000 individuals with system-changing ideas. So before I was at Ashoka, I was a little kid that grew up here in LA, in South Central, specifically in Watts, and I wanted to be a rocket scientist. So I loved science fairs and the math Olympics and everything that was tech-y and STEM-y. And unfortunately, there were not a lot of quality math and science classes in my neighborhood. And there weren't after-school programs that were really pushing me to explore math and science and how to be a rocket scientist. So I was told when I was a kid that it was very unlikely for me to have the interests that I had because of my background. And I was lucky enough to have a village and a support system that celebrated what I was excited about and said, hey, you know what, go on for it, Autumn. You're going to be the little brown kid with huge hair that wants to be a rocket scientist, but do it anyway. So I went to Stanford, I worked on small satellites, and I was the only chocolate drop in my research groups that was really interested in math and science and that was working on aeronautics and astronautics. So it wasn't enough for me to be celebrated. I went to connect and multiply out my work. So I always go back to my background in engineering, and I think about the first law of thermodynamics. Energy can't be created or destroyed, it's converted. So you don't just make ice melt. Thermal energy is converted. And that kind of got me to what I do at Ashoka. We try to create a world full of change makers, or individuals that think that they can have the self-permission to create change, or not create change, but convert change somehow, because change is a type of energy. So we started doing this in 1980 by looking for individuals with system-changing ideas. So it could be figuring out how to use rats to sniff out landmines, or how to give small loans to people that traditionally didn't have access to funding, or microfinance. And we celebrate those folks by giving them the title of a social entrepreneur. And before that was a major, or before there were convenings on social entrepreneurship, we were finding these individuals and celebrating what they did and also sharing living stipends with them. And the idea is that we support systems change by spotting patterns in what these 3,000 social entrepreneurs around the world are doing. And a very interesting pattern that we noticed was that over 90% of these individuals had a change-making experience before they were 20 years old. So as we connected all of these social entrepreneurs, we started spotting that even more and more and more. And we realized that in order to build a world of change makers, we could not just work with these elite adults, these over 3,000 fellows that were labeled social entrepreneurs in 88 countries. we realized that we had to somehow cultivate that kind of change making in young people. And instead of just selecting individuals, we started selecting ecosystems in schools and looking for schools that were cultivating change making in an influential way, in an innovative way, through systems and culture and through just interesting ways that you can try to make a young person think, hey, I can be a change maker, and multiply out that work. Because it's not enough just to have 3,000 individuals around the world that are doing something interesting. It has to be multiplied out in order to cultivate that kind of change. So we have found these schools around the world, and we have 172 as of last week, actually, when I was in Johannesburg, finding our 172nd school in Tsakani Township. And now we're connecting all of those schools together the same way that we connected our fellows together. And we found that the way to do it is digitally, because young people are communicating with each other through their selfies and through FaceTiming each other. And they're finding ways to figure out what change making looks like in Brooklyn, how that can work in Mumbai, and then how that can work in New Orleans. So we're connecting that together and multiplying out the work so that hopefully we will have a world of change makers. And we won't have to wait 35 years like we did to find these over 3,000 Ashoka Fellows. And I'd like to think that in order for us to continue change making in our everyday lives, all of us are here because we understand change making. But that's not enough. A room full of us that are celebrating what we do is not enough. We have to connect what we're doing and multiply it out. A cool place where we're finding change making in change maker schools is in Haiti. And during the Haitian Revolution, right before it actually happened, a French historian noticed that something was happening every time there were revolutions where there was a colony. And he said, all that is needed is that great man that nature owes its vexed children. Where is he or she, I like to think. So I hope that you all can answer that and say that great person is here. And you can multiply out the work of change making digitally so that we create a world full of change makers. Thank you.
In the words of Joey Lawrence, whoa. Did I do that right? Does anybody remember Blossom? Okay. Okay. Take a deep breath. In and out. I'm just so grateful to be in this room with all of you and to have just witnessed all these incredible speakers. Can everybody give them a huge round of applause and whoa! We are going to, as Allison said, take it to the streets, apply our magic, apply the magic of these phones in our dating lives, in our social lives, in our change-making lives. There is a photograph. Remember? Jonathan? Photograph? A picture. A picture of walking across the yellow brick road, telling an individual's story. The power of that story through TV, video, film, and radio, taking a trip to Hogwarts, to become a leader, to go beyond the walls of Hogwarts, where every one of us is a hero, not simply waiting for Superman, but waiting for a Justice League, where everyone is indeed a change maker, using the power of all the stories we know and love, the power of DC Comics, the power of Marvel, who brought us Spider-Man, and the saying that with great power comes great responsibility. Now, one of the things that I'm amazed by here, and with the talk by Lennon about the dinner party, is that we're not simply arguing for our physical needs. We're not simply arguing for our basic human rights, which are still not being met in our world. We are arguing for the right to be human. When we look at DC and the discussion that is happening with the Department of Education, and the mainstream media's discussion of education. That ethos, that discussion, is still stuck in a 20th century model of education, if we're lucky. It's kind of 19th century, really. And yet, at DML, every single individual and group that is represented here has the power to ramp up that discussion and create new standards for empathy, change-making, and a complete system-wide transformation of what learning is in the 21st century, what being a citizen is in the 21st century. That is tremendous power, and with that great power comes great responsibility. So let's use that power to transform DC, to transform the education, the power of these Ignite Talk speakers, the powers of everyone at DML, and let's transform this country and this world to be more just, more loving, more magical. Have an awesome rest of your conference, and thank you from the bottom of the heart of education, learning, and change-making. Thank you. Also,